Hello, everyone. This is Nima, and welcome back to another episode of the Think Nima podcast, where I interview and speak with creatives, artists, innovators from any field about their backgrounds, journeys, struggles, accomplishments, worldviews, and any other interesting topics. So today I'm joined by my guest, Michael Yeung. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Please correct me if I don't. Um,
You got it.
Perfect. Who is one of the co-founders of the Web3 company Chestr Labs. Chester has been a community-based platform that has empowered many NFT creators, including myself, since last year. And they've done this through sponsoring artist gas fee payments, collecting NFT artworks from artists, and running various bounty programs that reward artists in different ways. They recently rebranded as Joyn. I hope I'm pronouncing that right as well, which is Joyn, with many new plans to pursue all around community and co-ownership. So, Michael, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Thank you. That was a really great intro. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good too. I'm looking forward to this conversation. And that's how I pronounce join, right?
That's correct.
Perfect. Cool. So, I'd love it if you could give an intro to what your background is and how you found your way into entrepreneurship and NFTs and ultimately creating Chester Labs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So first of all, I'm from Toronto, Canada. Been living here most of my life, but at the same time, also went to elementary school in Hong Kong, so kind of had exposure to pretty different cultures. That really shaped my worldview and through that upbringing process. So my college education was pretty much focused on economics. I started my career with some internships in the private equity space, but like really soon realized that it's not for me. I just don't enjoy that sort of numbers and sort of deals comparisons all day. Just that's not a type of work that I find fits what I'm looking for. So eventually transitioned into software engineering, and that was the start of the bulk of my career, pretty much working for different tech startups in North America. So I lived in the States for a bit, in Canada, and started paying attention to crypto back in 2016. I think I found out about crypto through this book called Blockchain Revolution. That was like on my way back. I think from traveling, I was in an airport. I found the book and then started reading about it. So got super fascinated, and then first got my exposure through retail investing, just another way of saying like aping in, buying some ether very early on. So eventually the tech really drew me in there. Started learning a lot more, started getting more involved with like small projects and so on. And then, yeah, so I think throughout 2017, 2018, that was when we first saw the wave of, token boom, right? There was a lot of ICOs back then with like basically projects picking up whatever commercial space and then they're claiming, hey, here's a white paper, we're going to issue a token, and then a lot of retail investors just started aping in. Very similar to what we're seeing at the moment, with all these token sales or like new NFT drops and so on, just like with a different flavor. And yeah, another meaningful thing is like back then we also saw the rise of crypto kitties and crypto punks, which is the first NFT applications in a creative context. And then fast forwarding a little bit, so last year, beginning of last year, I left my full-time job. So it was a pretty comfy job. Like that's when I was starting, taking when my career started really developing further. I started having leadership responsibilities and so on. But at the same time, things started to become clear that's not what I'm looking for. And I also was, privileged enough to have invested in crypto early on, so that comfortable enough to, take a lot of risks and do things that I really like. So that's leading us to starting Chester. Um, and yeah, since then we've definitely gone through a lot of things, like as you mentioned, the community programs, the shipping of some sort of proof of concepts, like basically different ways to explore how to empower more creators to engage in this space sustainably, right? Um, and then recently gone through a funding round as well, and then leading us to this current rebrand. But I'm sure we'll get into that a bit.
Yeah, perfect. So, sort of, have you always seen yourself like as an entrepreneur, or was that something that sort of dawned on you gradually over the years? Like going back to your background of economics and software engineering, during those times, did did you always see yourself as an entrepreneur, or was that more recent then?
Yeah, I think probably as soon as I switched my career into software engineering, like with the intention of being an entrepreneur one day. And then I deliberately targeted most tech startups and instead of bigger tech companies with more cushiony jobs. Um, yeah, because I knew that one day I wanted to start my own thing. And then starting Chestr actually came a little earlier than expected, but yeah, here we are.
Cool. And to give I guess, more of an introduction to some people who don't know what Chestr is, or what Chestr and Joyn are, could you sort of give a sort of summary of what the original vision was when you guys started Chestr and what it is now?
Yeah, 100%. So starting off, definitely it came from this problem space that we observed. So in a sense, with past years boom in the NFT market, right? There's a lot of similarities compared to previous cycles of the crypto market, just different flavors. Um, there's a lot of hype and speculation, a lot of excitement with the potential of this new technology and so on. And people are drawn to this space because there's a huge uh, potential of empowering a new class of people who are traditionally maybe like not as privileged or have a lot of difficulties in their corresponding careers and so on, right? Like artists or creators in general. So definitely a lot of hype and excitement. But at the same time, really through hanging out with more creators and diving deeper into what is the fundamental of this boom, we realize that it's actually the space is much more early stage than we think. Right? Um, if even accounting for big name like big drops from big name creators or people or Bored Ape and all these things. Sure, these are pioneers that introduce a lot of mainstream attention, a lot of sales, and so on. But at the same time, majority of the creators who are here, working their asses off, creating, trying to find out what it means to be in the NFT space. These creators are still not necessarily empowered, but they're always kind of chasing like a dangling carrot, right? Some sort of promise or some sort of utopia that's kind of deliberately crafted by this let's say this category of platforms and big name media and so on that's trying to push this narrative. There's no doubt about it that was the case, and at the end of the day, that was also primarily fueled by some of the incumbents from the previous crypto booms, like some people who got really rich a few years back, started their own thing, and then they've been building, and then now it's like becoming this time where okay, things starting to mature. Let's put a lot of attention towards it. Let's push a lot of hype and to attract more audience. That's how markets grow. So that's not wrong, so to speak, but at the same time, it's very early stage and it's not necessarily always clear for the average new entrant into the space, right? So we immediately identified this as a problem space, thinking that okay, if it is true that with NFTs and all these new technologies, there is so much potential for the average individual coming in, but at the same time, they still can't hit that promised level of success. What can we do to make sure they at least have a fair shot, right? So then we start developing, what sort of uh, either technology or community support programs that we could experiment with to offer that immediate support for them. I'll pause it at that for now in case you have questions, but we can get into the subsequent things that we did as well.
Great. Yeah, that's a great introduction. I think good identification of a problem which you could solve. And I think you guys did do that for sure. So since the start, it seems that you've had a team for Chestr, and it hasn't really been a one-man show. And that's what it seems to me anyway.
Mm-hmm.
What things do you look for when picking who you work with? Like how did you filter between people back then, and how do you filter now between people who might be interested in being business partners?
Oh, business partners in particular, or just team members. I can start with team members, I suppose.
Yeah, let's go with both, I guess.
Okay. So yeah, since day one, I think John Marco was also here, so he's actually one of the first people that I approached. I remember when we first started chatting, the principles that I laid out is definitely about think long term. It's not about speculation. We all agree there's a lot of excitement around the space, but at the same time, real value has to be created over time through experimentation, through hard work. Even if we get lucky and earn some money in the meantime, if we didn't truly create something of value or have earned it, it's not going to be sustainable. And we're always going to worry about not being able to reproduce that success or sustain that success, right? So these are some of the really, really early on ideas that we still have to this day. And in fact, we're going to sort of summarize them and introduce them over next week's community announcements. But I would say definitely we prioritize passion over profit and mutual support over individual struggle, and also just thinking long term over speculation. That would be how we approach, finding sort of community collaborators, like community team like John Marco, Andrea, and Surush that we work with, and also like some employees that we hire, investors that we onboard, and also other business partners that we onboard. Hope that answered your question.
Yeah, no, I think especially similar passions, similar values, and then I think the long-term outlook is also a very important one, because that might not be the case in many situations. Like you might have business partners who might just want to make money, and then you don't know, what's going to happen to them, or whether they're going to stick around or not. But yeah, I think it's an important key that you said, people that also have a long-term vision, which is of similar values to yourself. So yeah, I think that's a good criteria to look for when working with people. What are some things that you think you and the team did well when building and launching Chestr Labs? And equally, what are some mistakes that you made along the way now you could have avoided?
Yeah, it's a really good question. In terms of things that we did well, I think the first thing that came to mind is definitely sticking to our fundamentals. Because let's say, looking back in the past years, right, we could already count so many times that different types of projects have come and gone. There are actually projects whom we thought would be really big, like within a really short period of time, but that turned out to be like highly speculative and so on. And at the same time, there are others like who are latecomers who actually really hit it big and now enjoying the next level of success. What we really did well, I think, is keeping to ourselves, making sure we don't deviate from our fundamentals too much, so that we don't forget why we started in the first place. And with that, I think we did a really good job, providing continual value, right, to the community through these support programs, while we internally start still trying to figure out, okay, what is that more scalable, sustainable, technology-based solutions going to look like? If we deviated from that and started, chasing the hype and so on, like I don't think we would have gotten here. We wouldn't have raised that funding round successfully and getting to this, verge of launching the next set of milestones. On the other hand, things that could have been improved definitely around, I think, communication, because like so far our team's not big. It wasn't until basically February that we started onboarding more, official employees. But before that, it was pretty much the three of us co-founders and three community team members who are helping us voluntarily. So definitely not a lot of bandwidth when it comes to executing things. So with that, sometimes we did let the sort of the busyness, right, the complexities get in the way, so that we didn't communicate a lot of things clearly and timely, and kind of led to people misunderstanding our mission or forgetting about us and so on. So some of the early success that we accumulated weren't able to be carried over to the next phase or current phase and so on. So that thing, I think, is something we could have been done better. But at the same time, that's more like an optimization thing, like how efficient we are building this set of Joyn as an organization, like which is a community platform. I don't worry about the fundamentals.
So on the communication aspect that you mentioned, let's say someone is in a similar sort of situation as you are. They're in a team, they're building something together. What sort of communication practices would you think should be done more, or should be encouraged, or how do you get around the communication problems, and how do you make sure that it stays in the best possible way?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question as well. Maybe I can think of an example, right? So let's say in a traditional or NFT aside, crypto aside, in a traditional startup setting, if you're starting a company, you have probably some really good ideas, and then you're looking at a market that has a pain point, right? You want to tackle it, and you want to introduce some solution to to, to solve that problem. And but in the meantime, all you have is you and your co-founders. You don't have the resource or or you don't need the time to build something out. So in this case, the best way to make sure that your solution or your theoretical solution is actually viable is to try to talk to more people and to validate these ideas early on, right? So you minimize the chance that you're missing the mark altogether. So this is a really common mental model, among founders. It's always been like that, like for the past few decades. Um, and, and what it says is that communication is key. But at the same time, if you apply it to crypto context, everything becomes more complicated because at the same time, the sort of market or the community or the ecosystem is still trying to find out about its own identity, right? There's no one true way of doing things, and a lot of times creators don't, like creators or entrepreneurs, other founders and investors don't even know what they're looking for. Every day there are new platforms and tools emerging, and there are new categories that are emerging, and things kind of like, and we've seen cases where things become self-fulfilling prophecies, and we've seen cases where someone who's right, but they're right a little bit too early on, so that the technologies aren't actually ready for them to make that reality. So there's a lot more pitfalls and moving pieces in a Web3 context, and that means like sometimes communication in the open might also become a double-edged sword, right? You get more insights, but those insights could do you more harm than good, which is like another added layer of complexity that like the average, let's say, founder or even as a creator, when you're starting some project, right, or starting your own new collection, like it's something that you have to deal with because it's a very noisy place. So that's my current perspective on it. So the learning from it is that I think when in doubt, just try to communicate in the open and build in the open, and then employ judgment, and then try to like associate it with existing fundamentals. So that, let's say, if you get some advice from, let's say, a big time collector or big time investor that really wants to steer you in a certain direction, right? You got to remember why you're starting in the first place. You got to remember like what your principles are, so that you don't deviate too much, because there are such thing as bad advice. And at the same time, it doesn't preclude you from trying to communicate in the open, so you do get more insights, right, as source materials that you can work with, and so that you can actually employ your judgment instead of building in closed doors and trying to make a lot of assumptions and guesses, which is like speculation.
That's a really great answer. Yeah, I mean, there is definitely a abundance of information and inputs, and just everyone with an opinion in the crypto space and the NFT space. So it is definitely very easy to get sidetracked. I think for most people, and especially if you're building something, I think it can be easy to get influenced by other people who, let's say, maybe they have slightly higher authority than you in some way, but then you end up listening to them and then going in the wrong path. So yeah, I think bringing it back to the fundamentals, as you said, or like your original vision, is a really good thing to keep in mind, while still, I guess, doing like speaking to whoever you need to speak about with, and keeping the communication clear within your own team.
Yeah, I definitely think so. And also definitely be mature about your intentions too. Because I've definitely heard cases where, some creators or founders say, like, I really want to do this and I want to stick to the principle, so I'm not going to listen to some advices about, testing with the market, trying to generate some revenue so that you're not, being reckless with your endeavor and so on, which is also like a valid advice, on its own. And in this let's say Web3 creative space, as a creator, I think is also important for you to figure out, like, what are you really doing with NFTs? If you see it as an entirely artistic pursuit, you do it for fun, it's not about money, then fine. But also deal with the consequences of not being able to earn money. So don't complain about it, right? Stick to your work, stick to your creative direction, and then if the work is actually good, people like, then money will come, recognition will come. But I think I see a lot of cases where people aren't truly content with this let's say conviction. They're not convicted to go with this direction. They say it, but they don't mean it. And at the same time, they see, oh, there all these other people are making sales, and then they get anxious. They try to chase after like certain ways of doing things, and then forgetting like why they're here in the first place. And And on the other hand, right, we've seen a lot of artists who like deliberately say, okay, this is a new form of digital product, which means there are commercial elements, which means we have to approach it very deliberately and consciously. I want to do things I like, but at the same time, I don't want to dismiss the commercial elements of it. So I want to approach, pricing, networking very deliberately and try to like increase my skills in that, which is totally valid as well. So I think these really go to say that like we need to be mature of what our intentions are, saying things that are like morally sounding good, sound bites, and so on.
That's very key information right there. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people probably don't even know why they're here. I mean, especially on the creator side, maybe I feel like people are maybe more likely to have mature intentions if they're on the builder side of things or if they're on a developer. I'm not sure. I'm not a developer, but on the creator side of things, I think there's definitely a lot more confusion as why people are here. Most people are here, I think, just because, well, they want to make money from their art. But um, yeah, it's good, I think, to have it clear to yourself. Maybe people should write it down for them to write it out. Why? What do they want from the NFT space? What do their NFTs? What purpose do they play? And yeah, what exactly are they doing here? I think that's a good question that you said. So let's say, what advice would you give to people who, let's say, are entrepreneurs themselves or are running their own businesses, but their businesses aren't in Web3, but they do want to incorporate NFTs or Web3 into their work somehow? How would you recommend people start seeing the world in like a Web3 way, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it does. I think um, first of all, I definitely think you gotta see this space as a multidisciplinary space. Like, don't get too opinionated on what something is ought to be. Like, it's not just about art. It's not just about technology. It's not just about business or so on. And with that, you as an individual, you need to be very conscious of like the type of skills that you need to develop and don't dismiss them as like, oh, I'm not made for that. Oh, I don't have any existing knowledge of that. Because entrepreneurship it does not take a very solid form of like, oh, you have to incorporate a company or you have to, hire people and so on. If you're a creator, you want to share your work and then monetize and then develop your own personal brand or, build up a network like that. This is part entrepreneurship already. So recognize some of these elements as what they are and then deliberately try to understand them and then develop skills around them. So you don't actually oversee pitfalls or like having to waste a lot of time, doing things that um, are irrelevant, so to speak, and then introducing a lot of stress for yourself or like misaligned expectation for yourself. So
Mhm. And from the software side of things, because if I got it right, the last sort of field you were involved in was software development. If there are people sort of studying software development right now, or maybe they have a software development job and they want to get involved in Web3 as well, would you have any good places for them to start? Could you recommend anything for software development in particular?
oh yeah. So definitely go to hackathons. There's a lot of hackathons going on right now. Some are organized by like nonprofit organizations, some are organized by investors even, or some are by other companies. But the common theme is that there's a lot of resources around educating newcomers, right? Um, in that case, definitely participate in hackathons. So like meet people, build projects, test things out. That's how I personally got started in the software engineering space. That was like I think back in 2012 or 2013 or something. Yeah.
Cool, cool. So I want to talk about the community aspect a bit, especially of Chester and what you guys are doing at Chestr Labs. Obviously, community has been a huge part since the start. It's a community-based platform. So I want to ask, how do you manage the community around Chester and its expectations and changing demands? And also, similar sort of follow up on that question, has there been anything since the start that's surprised you about the community that's formed around Chester?
So yeah, from my perspective, One thing that came across as surprising is definitely how high energy this whole ecosystem is. Um, but at the same time, a lot of the engagements I see in the ecosystem are really fragmented. Like some of them are like, you probably see a lot of like, oh yeah, GMs or like, your work is great, a lot of these comments, but they strike me as pretty surface level. And the really meaningful relationships are kind of only a small portion of that. I'm sure we've met some new friends and all, but if you compare how many new people you've been exposed to versus how many people you actually still recurrently talk to, that's probably like a really small portion. That's something that's pretty extreme, I think, in the crypto space. Like not just our community, but like most other communities. Um, but at the same time, I do think there's a really supportive environment here in general, where people's at least their first instinct is not to criticize or to take you down, but to like, oh cool, like I like this. Like there's this sense of shared camaraderie trying to build this space and trying to experiment with this new technology and so, which is something I really like. So with Chestr itself, I think there's been a few different phases of our community. So when we first got started, I think that was what last year May, and then going sometime into let's say September. That was definitely the first September October. Yeah, that was definitely the first phase where we had a lot of energy around the first set of things that we're trying to do, which is around the mystery chest stuff, right? The content bounty stuff. That was our first set of solution developed to tackle this problem of emerging creators don't have access to resources and tools. We're trying to put that as like a potential equalizer for emerging creators. So back then there was a lot of energy around oh yeah, the promise of these things, and then we actually did a couple successful drops. I think you were also one of them, and we made a Genesis series that was sold out pretty fast. That was really exciting. And then as we progressed, I think back then October. So that's when we started to realize, okay, this is cool, but as a technology solution on its own, that sort of mystery chest format is also not very scalable, and it won't do the job of what we're trying to do, which is like to equalize opportunities for as many people as possible in the space and have them engage sustainably, because there are still some drawbacks with that format. So we kind of went into research mode, and then with like so the community kind of going into this like maintenance phase where we have some recurring community programs that are running. Like kudos to Gianmarco, Andrew, and Surush, where our community team really trying to like hold the fort and get some of the relationships going and hold some of these community programs. So that was, but in general, we had much less activity and discussions in the community. So that was a maintenance phase, and kind of I say that would last until say sometime this month, and because like behind the scenes we're busy with fundraising, research and development, and so on. So there are these two phases in the past, and now we're pretty much on the cusp of starting on a new phase where, for the first time, we're now laying out in the open. Hey, this is the set of things that we're going to develop as a platform, as a community. We're going to start sharing a lot more information in the open. Commit a lot more resources to taking these community programs to the next level, and so on and so forth. And we will also deliberately approach having more, meaningful discussions within the community context. So that would be a summary of the Chestr community, I think.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So since you touched on it now, I was going to ask this question later, but I'll ask it now. Could you describe the vision behind Joyn, and which is this new platform that you guys have rebranded to? What was the reasoning behind the rebranding of the platform? And yeah, what do you hope to achieve, or how do you hope Joyn will find its place in the NFT Web3 world?
Got it. So yeah, I'll start with the easiest question, which is like the decision behind rebranding. So in itself, I think it's a founding moment of something new and something we're committing to. So throughout the past year, we've done a lot of things. We've had a lot of experiments and so on. But at the same time, there was not a singular identity that was, or a set of things that we're kind of consolidated around. So we want to take this chance to leverage as a founding moment. So we now declare to everyone that, okay, through the past year, we have now identified a set of things and our vision and a mission that we want to develop, and we've also gotten some funding, so we're gonna do this for real and taking it very seriously, not just like hanging out for fun and so on. So that's definitely the motivation behind it. And the Joyn brand is more so a brand that can is more flexible. It's more easily remembered versus Chestr Labs. Right? It's not something that means much. Um, and going forward, our mission is definitely committing to this set of potential solutions for that problem space that we identified earlier. So to summarize, the problem space is that Web3 promises to return control to the average individual, right, for them to take ownership of their own creative work. But at the same time, there's a lot of newfound responsibilities because the average individual is not ready to take on the new marketing or business, or, all these different aspects of managing their own work. In this case, the space overwhelmingly favors people who are good at building hype or have speculative activities or have some existing connections and resources and so on, and that's not the state of a sustainable space. That's why we want to do things to change it. And with that, our hypothesis is that looking at some of the existing trends, around, for example, creative space, we've been seeing a lot of collaborations, right? These are things that have been happening for decades, like especially also recently, even ramped up to the next degree where, in the music industry, half of Billboard's top songs are collaborations. And a lot of these other recent big name, let's say NFT collections and so on are also collaborations. These are teams that have found each other in close context and then develop something together and then launch and then gradually pull in more resources. None of these are started by a single person or like behind closed doors, so to speak. And that's really the nature of Web3 creative endeavors. So at the same time, we realize that, okay, so with this observation and with the same problem space, what can we actually do to make sure more people have a fair shot at creating something meaningful and sustainable in this context, right? So that means with Joyn, we want to provide a platform where anyone, the creators with the good ideas or the right skills can come onto the platform and discover each other's ideas or initiatives, right? And then help each other out. And in this case, through contributing their own effort, right, or ideas and so on, we can actually realize a creative vision and have a fair shot of hitting success instead of working behind closed doors as an individual. So this is basically the direction that we want to take it. Yeah, hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it did. I really like how you guys are focusing on sort of the collaborative community aspect of things in general, because I think I definitely, obviously, I understood your vision from why you guys created this, but from a creator's point of view as well, I think a lot of people, including myself again, are maybe a bit hesitant towards collaborations and things that just involve other people. That's just like an introvert thing or an artist introvert thing or just an artist thing. But a lot of people prefer to do things by themselves, and I've been like that for the longest time. And I mean, I'm hoping that platforms such as Joyn will encourage collaborations more as well. Because I mean, the more I'm sort of maturing in this Web3 space and just looking around, the more I'm seeing that like greater and greater things actually happen when people work together and when people join forces and they develop a team or they do something that involves other people in some way. And it's quite obviously we all love the examples of people just doing it completely by themselves and going all the way to the top. And there's a few examples of those, but they are rare, I think, when you compare it to the whole grand scheme of things. So yeah, I hope it encourages more and more collaboration. Because obviously you guys have like these membership tokens that you can play around with and Joyn, and yeah, other sort of collaborative projects. So yeah, that's the sort of comment that I had. That I hope it encourages collaborations more and sort of opens artists' eyes a bit more towards those ways of doing things as well, not just doing it as an island by themselves.
Yeah, I think I can help add more perspective to that as well. Because like let's say thinking from let's say again, set aside Web3, set aside NFTs and everything. Let's say if you're a musician starting off, you assuming all things go well, you will hit a point where you need additional help. No matter what your talent is, no matter how good your music is, you will need the help of, let's say, like an agent, right, to represent you, to negotiate with other publishing agencies, record labels, and so on. And also you need the record labels to help you with your production resources, your studio resources, and you need uh, publishing help so that you can get that exposure, the distribution of your work to others, right? Because as an individual, you're not necessarily equipped to handle all the complex licensing dealings or marketing or whatever, right? So they will hit a point realistically where you need that different types of help. Let alone set aside the commercial part, even just the creative element, right? You might hit a creative block at some point, and 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 you might even by collaborating with other artists, you actually get exposure to a new set of creative possibilities instead of getting stale with your own like existing direction. So these are all existing elements that's been happening over and over in different forms, not just music, but even in like movies, like uh, uh, visual arts, or even engineering, right? In a way. Um, so these are not something that's new that we need to re-educate ourselves about. But just that sometimes when it comes to um, but it's sometimes not immediately obvious for most individuals because these, at the end of the day, right? If you're starting something new, as mentioned before, you don't necessarily know if you're taking that entrepreneurship journey. So you don't know if you actually need to wrestle with these elements right away. So you kind of have this like sort of like 50-50 attitude towards, oh yeah, I'm gonna like part doing this for fun, part doing this to create a career, part doing it to to test the water, see if I can sell something and see where things go from there, which is okay. But at one point, sooner rather than later, you're gonna hit that part um, where you're going to need other people's help. Like, right? It's like depends on what element of the help it comes from. So I think it's just like a change in mentality, and then we want to provide the platform for that inevitable need for cooperation to take place on. Um, and one last thing to clarify is like when it comes to collaboration, it doesn't even have to be like creative contributions. It can literally be like help me promote something, help me get feedback, help me moderate my community, and so on. So there's a lot of like divergent elements where people can get creative with this sort of project format on the Joyn platform.
Yeah, it's great that you're providing the platform for that. I think definitely a key part of the whole picture, though, as we've just been talking about, is in the mind of the artist as well, and that limitation that they have for themselves. And I say they, but it includes me, like the limitations that we put on ourselves, that we think that we should just do things completely by ourselves. I don't know why that's such a big temptation for a lot of artists and other types of professions too, as we said. But yeah, I think that's a part of the image too. Is a key part of the flow of the artists sort of breaking that limitation in their own minds, that and actually, it's not almost it's similar to asking for help, but it's more just like joining forces and um, taking the necessary steps, or also just recontextualizing things in their own heads about how they're doing things, so that they can allow other people to join what they're doing. Because that might actually work out better in their own favor as well, and they might end up going further. So yeah, definitely a great thing that's happening. Hopefully, it does encourage artists to join forces more. So since there's a lot of art collection and these content bounties and art curation, a lot of this stuff has been going on in Chester for the past year. And, through the Discord, through Twitter, and all that. I'm guessing you've seen a lot of art by now, a lot of artists doing this. Um, so I just want to talk a little about the role of the artists in the NFT space, and sort of. I just want to ask if you've noticed any patterns across the people who have sort of risen to the top um, of your curation rounds, of the bounty rounds, of all of these other people that end up getting collected. Have you noticed any main thing that all those artists have in, and what are those things?
Oh yeah, this is a good question. Um, so okay, so I'm going to try to loosen the parameter a bit. So because because from my perspective, it's not black and white. Like first, like risen to the top. Um, like what's the definition of top, right? Let's say super rare. Super rare is currently a really good milestone for a lot of emerging NFT creators in the space. But sometimes also people focus on that too much for their own good. Because I've definitely personally talked to a lot of super rare creators where now that they've gone there, they're still constantly worried about whether the next piece is going to sustain the floor, and it's getting harder and harder because at that high price floor, the circle of collectors are getting fewer and fewer. So they're basically still playing the same game as like the emerging creator, but with everything at a higher stake. So the definition of success right now is still pretty much ambiguous. Um, and then another example of success might be, let's say, some sort of collections sold out and with like a 5 million out. So that part, I think, is a more like at least seems to be a more plausible definition of success at the moment. So let's say you started a collection like World of Women, right, or Cool Cats or Doodles, where it's based on your creative work, and then you got some initial capital through the sales, and then now you can leverage that capital and your community to further continue that experience. You can create something that unfolds over time. So that's more. I think that's more indicative of a first glimpse of success because there's something that you can continue, you can sustain, instead of selling one piece at a time, kind of worrying about that. It's almost like always chasing after that next sale. But to take a step back, to answer your question, if we were to look at, let's say, among the that I've collected personally, the one common theme is definitely like the work is high quality. I do notice that creators who have had an existing track record before Web3, either as like a designer or artist and so on, who has already developed some sort of maturity in their craft, these people are definitely more likely to succeed. Um, that's that. And then another class of creators who manage to hit success is they, they they're already pretty good at like building hype or like are business savvy and so on. Again, these are not wrong things, like not bad factors, but just objectively things that gave them advantage that that moved them closer to success, whatever that definition is. I would say those things. Um, and the third class of people that I've seen is definitely people who started off with neither of those, but they always kept a really positive attitude and just kept trying day in, day out, and then honing the craft and experimenting with different art forms, and then eventually found that recognition, and then kept them going. Like that's definitely the I would say the category that most people should shoot for, because that's the most sustainable way, because that's the way that you don't rely on any external factors. But it's more so about what you're actually putting in the day to day, right? And it's, for lack of a better term, that's the most honest way of earning success. So I would say these three categories are the ones I've seen the most that have gotten to some level of success.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Thank you for sharing that. So I just have two last questions, and these are more, I guess you could say, fundamental or philosophical sort of questions. So I'm just going to ask them both, and you can answer whichever one. So first one is, since you mentioned success, what is your definition of success personally? And second one is, what drives you? What drives you to do all these things? What drives you to reach that success?
Yeah, yeah. So I first, before I answer this question, I want to clarify this definition of success may not apply to most people. It's definitely for me personally, and so take it what you may. So the reason why I started this whole thing is I wanted to, like, my most fundamental motivations. I wanted to share my passion for life with others. It sounds really cheesy. It sounds really, I don't know, like hand wavy, fluffy, but that's as fundamental as it gets for me. Um, that's something that I've been searching for a while. Only was able to actually start um, doing something to get there because, again, as mentioned, I was lucky enough to get invested in crypto early, so got some modest wealth that I don't have to work pretty much for the rest of my life, and it's a really privileged position, and that afforded me the clarity off the mind, right? I don't have to worry about paying bills. I don't have to worry about getting my next meal and having a day-to-day job and so on. So now I actually want to do something that's meaningful for myself so that I can die happy. So that's like really something that's as fundamental as it gets for me. So in this case, with what I started subsequently, right, like the whole like Chestr endeavor and then now Joyn, um, my definition of success is pretty much delivering, like every day, if I look back, if I can deliver positive impact to people's lives as possible, as like as many of them as possible, that is what I call success. I don't need to hit that, let's say, X amount of revenue, X amount of market cap. These are plausible goals, practically to sustain the organization, right? But for me personally, like that's not my core motivation. So this is how I look at things. Um, I know it's cheesy, but it's genuinely what I'm doing at the moment, and let's say it comes with its pros and cons. I can elaborate more if you're interested.
Yeah, please do. Please.
Cool. So the pros part, right? Definitely. It's very freeing. You don't have to work for money, and everything you do is it doesn't feel like work, right? It's just like things that you're doing because it aligns with your at least the purpose that you want to have. It gives you meaning. But the cons part is actually now, if things fail or everything that you mess up, or people who genuinely criticize what you're doing, these things hit home because these things are much more fundamental to you. Let's say if you like work a job, and then the purpose of working a job is to get you that daily income so you can do things that you love. Then that job, if you make a mistake there, whatever, it may risk your ability to generate income, but that's fine. You can like, kind of take a step back and like, okay, that doesn't mean that's not my identity. That's not who I am, right? But if if you're really trying to do something to build something meaningful that will be representative of your life's pursuit and so on, and if you mess it up and then you get into some major pitfalls, these really hit home, and they directly go straight to your identity, directly go straight to your meaning for life and so on. So I would say definitely that's the cons of it. But at the same time, having had this experience, it really gives me a newfound appreciation for the work that artists put in for themselves, right? Because every day you're essentially trying to create something, which may not always be, let's say, bring in commercial value or some sort of measurable value in a societal sense. But you still have to do it because this is who you are, this is what you want to pursue, and there is no promise that you'll eventually or ever hit success. But you still have to do it. At the same time, every day that goes by, you don't see that success. You're going to start to doubt yourself because the work that you create directly represents who you are, right? So artists traditionally have been already like half a foot in this territory and dealing with this day to day. So this whole experience really gave me like a newfound respect and like empathy towards this sort of creative endeavor, and kind of reaffirmed my mission to do something meaningful and support quote creators in this space, which whatever background you're from.
Yeah, this sort of creative endeavor path. I guess whichever discipline it is from, whether you're a developer or whether you're creating a company or whether you're creating art, um, and you're creating something, and that creative endeavor path. Yeah, I definitely also relate with some of the things you said. It's higher. I would say it's higher stakes and higher rewards. Like, yeah, you definitely do feel the hits more because it's if it's a true calling that you're pursuing, then it's a true calling and it feels true to you and it's a fundamental value. And then if that gets attacked, you you're more identified with it, so you feel more attacked because it's a fundamental thing that you're pursuing. But at the same time, on the other side, uh, if your heart's actually in it, when something ends up going well, then you'll be much more happy than just getting a promotion at a job that you don't like or something like that. Because it's a fundamental value that's just expanded its reach. So yeah, no, thank you for sharing your insights on that. That was interesting. Um, it's been wonderful speaking with you, man. I think that's pretty much all the questions I had. I'm sure many people will find this useful in their path towards entrepreneurship or creating things in general and just in the Web3 space. Do you have any closing remarks or anything else you want to say or anything coming in the future with Joyn or anything else?
Um, yeah, a couple of things. So one, if you're interested to keep an eye out on what we're building. Definitely, come hang out in the community, start some conversations. And right now, you can sign up with an email on the website, so you get notified when we release the new tools, new content, and so on. That's just like getting that out of the way. The second piece is, I would say, if there is one message that I really, really want to share with people today, is that don't set limits on yourself. Like, just be very clear with what your intention is with working with these Web3 technologies and being in the NFT space and so on. Be very clear with what the intention is, and then approach it deliberately. What type of skills you need to acquire, to get good at, to get where you want to go. Don't set limit on yourself as like, oh, I'm an artist, I'm only gonna focus on the creativity aspect, or oh, I'm an engineer, I can only code. But no, but this space is really multidisciplinary. It is what it takes to be able to make progress in the space.
And how can people stay up to date with anything happening with Joyn and any upcoming programs that you guys have?
Yeah, definitely follow us on Twitter, pop by our Discord, and you can also sign up on the website with an email.
Perfect. I definitely like what you said about sort of being clear about your intentions. I think that's a really important thing, with in or outside of the NFT space in general. It's a really good thing to be clear about your intentions. I think the problem is most people actually have no idea what they are in the first place. So it's finding it first and then just like clarifying it.
Yeah, I think so. It's something so simple, and even once you recognize it, it's also easier said than done. But it's also at the same time very important, because if you don't know that, you don't stick to that, you get carried away. Like, even I myself got like noticed a few instances where I could have been carried away. Like when we were fundraising, for example, some investors really definitely wanted to push us in a certain direction. They see community members as resources, right? And they see those as like potential commercial possibilities and so on. And if you don't know what your intention is, like, it's very easy to get carried away by these narratives and other things. And I guess from an artist's perspective, that would be like collectors suggesting, hey, you should draw more around this direction. You should create more works around particular themes, so that more people will buy and so on. But is that really what you want?
Yeah, very easy for artists as well to lose their track. Whether it's with these trends, which nothing wrong with trends, but like with the Pepe art trend that came. Again, I have nothing against Pepe art at all, or Pepe. I had nothing against it, but it was kind of weird to see artists suddenly only make art about Pepe, and then, or some people I feel like people came out of nowhere just to make art about that, and then when that trend went, that's it. They were just left. So I think it's the same sort of thing for creators as well, to know why they're doing it, what do they want to make, what do they want people to take away from their pieces, why are they making their pieces, where do they want to see their pieces end up. So yeah, knowing the intention is definitely a good thing in every case, I would say.
So
Yeah.
one last thing, actually, I want to say, like, yeah, definitely try to be more intentional, but at the same time, don't forget to have fun. Trying to be perfect with everything is a recipe for anxiety as well, and can sort of stop you from trying anything.
Definitely true. Know your intention, but be flexible still. It's been wonderful to speak with you, Michael, again. I'm sure many people find this useful. And yeah, I wish you the best of luck with Joyn and Chestr Labs and everything else that you guys are up to. And I'll see you guys in the community.
So thank you. It's been great being able to share some of these ideas.
Thanks again, Michael. And thanks everyone for tuning in. Yeah, really appreciate you guys. And yeah, I hope everyone enjoys the rest of your day and have a good one. See you next time.
Awesome. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.